Welcome to the King Street Cinema podcast. My name's Andy, joined as ever by James, King Street Cinema's very own James Rowe. How are you, James?
I'm all right.
You're all right, yeah. It's a cold morning. We're sat here.
It's a bit cold in there.
It's in a building where the heating's gone, so
that's what it is.
waiting for it to be repaired. We're not at King Street, by the way. Don't let that be off. We're at my home, and we're here to discuss A Clockwork Orange. We're back to discussing the classic films.
Indeed.
This one's being shown on
The 9th
of March at 9 p.m. It's a return of the late night show.
Yeah, the yes, I think that's what we're calling them, the late showing.
Late shows, yeah.
Because it's not quite the midnight movie. That's have to wait probably a few years till we get to that point. For an audience for that. But so 9 o'clock start, so late.
And an out and out classic. This one.
I think so.
So much to talk about.
Yeah.
Where should we start? Should we start about the actual film, then we'll talk about... There was a lot of controversy about the movie as well.
Which often gets talked about, or used to get talked about more than the movie.
Yeah, so we'll talk about the movie first.
Yeah.
Based on a novel.
Absolutely.
Anthony
Burgess.
Yeah, which is now classic literature.
Absolutely.
And the movie was made less than a decade after the book was written, I believe.
Around about a decade, I'd say, yeah.
But it was a project that... they wanted to get off the ground not long at all after it came out. There's a story of the book in about 1963 was given to Kubrick to have a look at, to read, while he was making another movie.
Yes.
And he quite famously sort of dismissed it. He didn't like the language very much.
Yeah.
And then later on, after some of his now out-and-out classic movies didn't make much money, he wanted to make a smaller film, and I think as well because of a lot of youth pictures at the time, like Easy Rider, things like that, he was like, well, I can do this, and I can do it very well.
Yes.
And this was the project he went for.
Yeah.
Strange that it was kind of a smaller project for him, almost kind of an in-between big projects, would you say that?
Yeah, certainly. So you have it's sort of between two epics, 2001 and Barry Lyndon.
Yeah.
So, but you could consider this obviously not budget-wise, but in its scope, in its scale, and its themes, it's an epic.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It's not a small film. It's not a tiny film with saying very little. It's a big movie.
Yeah, but it's smaller budget.
Budget, absolutely.
And it probably wasn't intended to be at least pushed as much as in promotion-wise.
I wouldn't have.
It's hard to say because his name alone.
Yeah.
And when we go on to talk about the controversy with it, when it came out, it got an X certificate, and apparently a lot of the people at the BBFC were like, "Well, he's an important filmmaker. This movie isn't trash." Sort of thing.
I suppose. So we could probably leave some of that to a little bit later on. But there's a lot to talk about with that. So,
but. On its initial release,
yes. If we're saying here in the UK, anyway, so beginning of '72, I think.
It done very well.
Very well. I think it did very well, pretty much everywhere. It was a huge success. You know, so saying budget-wise, about $1 million, made over 100 million.
Yeah.
So it's 100%. Sorry, 1,000.
And kind of instantly affected pop culture, which this is one of the language that Burgess sort of made up, really, coming from influences from a lot of things.
Nadsat sort of slang language, sort of Russian and Cockney rhyming slang, and some other bits and pieces thrown all together in a big, pile of language. So I mean, I would say. If we're just talking from the film point of view, the great thing about the movie that helps with the language is the visuals.
Yeah.
And obviously the tone and mannerisms of the people speaking the language. Because without that, when you read the book, it can be very off-putting. Yeah. Like if you're not really into linguistics in any kind of way, you just look at it and you go, why am I bothering with this? I have to now learn another language in order to enjoy this novel. Yeah. Where you don't need to do that with the film.
Yeah.
Right? So
it is a very visual film as well. Should you just quickly go over the plot?
Yeah, sure.
Shall I leave that to you? You'll probably ramble less than me.
We'll see. I'm very bad at, I think, explaining things, but I'll do my best. So I suppose the plot... the plot is, I suppose, in a way, is quite simple, I guess, in the sense of what it's about. Not what it's about, but what happens. So it's happens is that we have a character called Alex, who is a young teenage boy. Not specified exactly how old he is in the film, but he's 15 in the novel, by the way, so he's young. So it's a teenager, has a gang. They do a lot of very despicable things, which they enjoy doing. It's not a sort of... they don't see it as horrible. They just do horrible things and enjoy doing them. Have fun, let's say. You could say in a way that it's almost just like a game to them.
Yeah, it's not like they're out mugging to earn money.
Or, there's nothing sort of gangsterish about it, or thuggish in the sense of what we would generally consider thuggish behaviour. It's more, like, say, children don't even realise what they're doing, the implications of their actions and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's told in a very cartoonish kind of way, visually anyway, which Kubrick was very clever at doing, I think. Because you could have done it in a very different way, made it very visually very serious looking, and very dark, not just in its subject, but just in the way you're telling the story. But so we have Alex, who was the leader of his gang called the Droogs. He ends up committing a murder and has to go to a prison, obviously, where he is rehabilitated in a very unique fashion, which ultimately takes away his identity and what he enjoys in order to basically muzzle him and his behaviour. And that is ultimately the plot of the film, where the themes of the film really are what are important, which are about free will.
Yeah.
What it means to be you individually, and what needs to be done societally in order to control certain behaviours, and how far the state will go in order to stifle certain people's wants and desires. So I mean, that's the film, really.
Yeah.
Visually, it's amazing. It truly is. I think it's one of the most stunning films visually for its subject matter. And it is completely... If you'd never seen the film before, but you'd seen a whole bunch of other movies similar, you go, this is a film they've just taken stuff. Like any film after it, pretty much, that's about youth culture or anything, or gang relations of any kind.
Yeah.
This film is all over it.
Yeah. Being a horror fan, and it's not a horror movie.
Well, I
mean, there's so many home invasion movies that borrow from this. It was quite early on in the movie when it is the murder, isn't it? When they break in. Yes. Yeah.
Well, there's a couple of home invasions in the film,
and he ends up. Yeah, but it's the mask they wear is very The Purge. And it's a weird one because it's a very dark film, but visually it's quite bright, isn't it?
Very bright. The music's very bright and playful for the most part. It sets the tone. The music is amazing in it, and I love it. Wendy Carlos's renditions of her own music, but also classical pieces as well.
Famously, Beethoven's Ninth
Symphony, which is Alex's, the main character's favourite piece of music. And so, also important. The music, therefore, is very important to the character, and important to the theme of the film about free will and taking away people's free will. Which I don't give away everything in the film, but it plays a very extremely important part in one of the most famous scenes in the film.
Yeah.
But yes, the music, it's clear, it's important to know that Alex enjoys this kind of music because it's to show that this is not an idiot.
Yeah.
They're not want to put a snobbish sense on it, on classical music necessarily, but it's important to recognise that Alex isn't some sort of moron. He enjoys very much what he does, and he knows why he has impulsions to do what he does. They're not done out of some kind of I don't understand necessarily what I'm doing. But I did mention obviously earlier that they enjoy the violence almost and other sexual violence as well, almost to the extent of not realising what they're doing. But I don't think that's quite the same with Alex. Alex, to the rest of his droogs, is different. He's the leader for a reason, which is that he's smarter. So, there's definitely something about him that's different to other characters, and they're not the only gang as well in the film. So it's again important to show that they're not something unique to this world. They're clearly something that's happening throughout society, and it's very much a commentary, not necessarily on the time itself that it was made, but what the future what kind of future we may get to, because it is set in the future, though not specifically said when.
Does it say it's set in the near future?
Yes, I can't remember if they do have any dates.
No, there's no dates, but I think it might say, or it might even be the book that says near future. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think in the book, certainly.
Yeah, but there's no year, which is good.
Yeah,
because I'd hate it if this film was set in like 1986 or something, which a lot of movies from that era we've long gone when they're past, and it doesn't matter so much, but it kind of, when you see it, you're like, oh, do you know what I mean? It ages to film. Whereas I don't think this film's aged that much.
No, certainly not in its themes and what it's commentary on, what it's saying, all that. Of course, visually, there is a lot of, even though it's made or released in the early 70s, has a bit of a 60s feel to it. Still, if you've seen 2001, you get sort of like a lot of different but similar not architecture, furniture, things like that in the film, which you look at and you go, of that time, very futuristic of that time, So I quite like that about it, because these are kind of fashions and styles that go in and out, right? Yeah. So become popular again, and then retreat, and then come back. It
kind of looks like an exaggerated 60s to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not quite Austin Powers, but there's a bit of that.
Oh, completely. Yeah.
And there's the scene where is it in Camden? It looks like it's Camden. When they're out and about, there's like, you see records and
you see these elements to the film I don't really know about, like where things were shot and stuff like that. It very well could be. I mean, obviously,
but to me, it reminds me if it isn't there,
music fairs, that kind of thing. Yeah, absolutely.
I can't think of, but one of the records is there's a fictional band written on it, which later became a real band. I can't think who it is. Yeah. Someone like Haircut 100 or Flock of Seagulls.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. Yeah. It might be either of those bands.
Yeah, it's one of those who later became an 80s pop band, which shows as well how influential the film.
Well, I mentioned before, like the film is. So many things within the film you see in other movies going forward, and also in just youth culture of all the decades, even up to, I'm sure, to this point. There are still young teenagers watching this film and being influenced by it, aesthetically, taking elements of it. So in the 80s especially, 70s and 80s, there were loads of people that were visually taken by the film and incorporated that into their own art.
Which it is such an iconic movie. There's for reasons we will soon talk about it, but I didn't watch this film properly until I would have been. I feel like I was older, but I'd have been late teens, maybe about 20. I don't know. But when it got reissued, I'd seen a very dodgy copy of it before, which didn't really give me what the film was. But before we go on about that, I want to talk about the lead performance as well, because
so Malcolm McDowell,
so good in this movie, and one of those I can't picture anybody else playing now.
No. Originally Mick Jagger.
Mick Jagger and the Droogs were meant to be the rest of the Stones.
Yeah, it would have been awful.
Yeah, you knew that. You didn't just see me note there. I've written Mick Jagger.
I've known that for quite a while, and I just thought, it's the kind of thing you can see absolutely people talking about. Like, we should get like a big pop star to play Alex. Mick Jagger, fantastic. He's kind of seen as scary, to a lot of people, of the older generation and all that. And this kind of thing. Absolutely.
It would have been terrible.
It would have been terrible.
Yeah,
it really would have.
But Kubrick, I think he might have been quoted saying that he didn't want to do it if it wasn't Malcolm McDowell. He'd seen him in If.
Yeah, he'd seen him in If. Saw that the potential, or really saw the greatness already. As a young man. I mean, how old was he in If? I mean, it's not that long before. It's probably about 3 years or so before. He's mid-20s anyway, I'd say, or early 20s. And I love If. If's a great film. Is kind of in a way not necessarily a precursor to this. Like, it's not saying exactly the same things, but there are similarities certainly about authority and fighting, fighting for being who you are, whatever that may be, even if it is awful, kind of thing. But that's not really, That aside, McDowell is fantastic in the film. and yeah, I couldn't really. I'm just thinking of other actors' leads. I mean, he was new, so let's but young people around that time, young actors coming up who could have played early 70s. Who do you think it would be? A British actor.
I mean, it's difficult because we think in hindsight we're only thinking of people who've become
of course
big now. But also it's kind of after this movie he never went on to become that big star. He became a very credible character actor, really.
Certainly,
and often playing the darker roles, which maybe was because of this.
Yeah.
Well, he might have been headed that way anyway, but
I don't. That's the thing about acting careers, like you say, looking in hindsight, looking back at something. I'm sure that actors don't think to themselves, right, I want to just play a type for the rest of my career. It's not a thing that they want to branch out and do many things. But of course, when you do have a role that is iconic, like this one is, it's going to be a lot of people are just going to be like, well, we've got a film, we've got a character that's quite similar. He's got those eyes. We want those eyes. It's something as boring as that. And if no other roles are coming up or anything that you find interesting, then you're going to do it, aren't you?
Yeah, he had a thriving career throughout till he passed away a few years ago.
Yeah, I don't think McDowell in any way is like. I don't think he would have been unhappy with his career.
And he, especially later in his career, really embraced this movie. He's very happy to talk about it. I think he was really proud of it, to be fair. And maybe as he got older, he realised that it did make his career.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, if it wasn't for this film, who knows? But more than likely, it would have been a different one, but probably not as.
For me, growing up in the 90s, when I couldn't properly see this movie, I instantly recognisable face from not necessarily huge films, but he was the villain in Tank Girl, which was it's a cult film now, but I remember it was pushed when it came out. He was in Star Trek Generations, which was a fairly big film when I was an early teen.
Yeah, it was a big movie then.
And he had that face, and when he appeared in the film, you're like, that's him.
Yeah.
Even if I didn't connect it then, now I always connect him with this. And even later on, his later films, he was in the reboots of Halloween as the Doctor.
Yes.
And he gave a completely different take, a lot different to the Donald Pleasance.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he was great in their movie. So he went about him, but I thought he was fantastic in those.
Yeah, but he's a great actor. So I mean, I've never seen him perform poorly in any film. He's been in a few films that I certainly did not enjoy.
Yeah.
But I've never thought he was bad in it.
Never, no. So he went through a lot making this movie as well. There was a few incidences, but what very visual. You can see there's the drowning scene where he's underwater for a good minute.
Or close to something like that. Certainly,
And
there is a cut in that. There's a cut between the shot. I think it might be an Axis shot. I'm not sure if it's but so there is a cut when it's happening. But still, I mean, we are talking still close to a minute, I'm sure. And they would have done it, I'm sure, a few times. I'm sure Kubrick would have really put him through it.
And the eyes.
Yes.
Where he damaged part of his eye.
Retina, I think. I can't remember exactly what was happening for it to happen. But I do know that was something that happened.
It's when his eyes were held open.
Oh, sorry, yes,
and there was a doctor on set putting drops in.
That's it,
and I've heard conflicting stories on this.
Right.
One of the producers, I think, in an interview said that while shooting he screamed and then they realised it was damaged. But his take on the story was he was fine, and then it hit him driving home.
Yeah. Which is probably more true, I'd say. He does a very good scream in the film, in that scene, which is probably what the person is remembering.
So that's
because it's a scream because he's realising what's happening to him, and is the point. It is the point where you start to, or if you're a certain type of person, start to sympathise with him.
And this is one of the things with the movie that it got criticised for. He's a horrible character, but Kubrick was really criticised for you sympathising for him. But it's how you. I think people have read the film wrong.
Well, probably.
You know, he's the lead character. It's narrated by him. He's near every scene. That's the point. It's almost like you're being brainwashed,
manipulated. You've been manipulated. Certainly,
exactly. Like, and the way it's told is his fantasy of it almost.
Absolutely, it's completely his fantasy. He's completely unreliable as far as it being true or not. Absolutely, you don't. It's his take on the whole thing.
One thing I love about the film is the way it shows the character as this big hard man, and then when it does see him with his family, and that's great. That's like when I was younger, I remember thinking, the bullies in school almost. They'd go home to their parents, and it's that bit of it. I think's kind of real. I like that, and it shows him for who he is.
His parents were really bad though, like as parents. They were just like awful. He's just completely neglectful. Don't understand him at all. Seemingly don't have any interest in understanding him. They're just You watch the film and it's like, oh god, okay.
His mum reminds me of Molly Sugden from Open.
Yes. He's got the same hair.
Is that era, isn't it? So should we talk about the... one thing I was going to mention is we were saying about, how it into pop culture and just... When it wasn't widely available over here, I remember seeing it spoofed so much. Like there's two examples I can think of. In The Simpsons.
Yes, absolutely. I remember that one very well,
Santa's Little Helper. And there's a bit... And I remember reading a review of Batman and Robin, and one of the many things it was criticised for was a kids' film referencing Clockwork Orange. There's a scene with Arnie, isn't there? Do you remember that?
Yes.
Proper. I mean, a kid wouldn't get that. I thought that was one of the better things about the movie.
Absolutely.
But so many things. And Halloween people, which is a bit of a funny one. People dressing up as a droog. But I suppose it's no worse than dressing up as Freddy Krueger when you think about it.
I don't in any kind of way, as an adult now anyway, and have seen the film, I don't in any way understand. I mean, I do, I suppose, in a weird kind of way, in a weird British kind of way. You understand, why it became the outrage. Media outrage was so good at doing, newspapers especially, so good at turning something from pretty much nothing into the worst thing in the world. But so without seeing the film, you just have all this information about how terrible it is, how awful it is, how corrupting it was, and how it's responsible for gang violence and such, and rapes and all this sort of stuff. You're hearing it's like it's because of this film, and you're like, as a young youthful sort of someone just finding themselves, as it were, you're like, oh my god. This is incredible. Like a film could actually do this. Can a film really do this? You don't realise really yet that of course it can't. That it's not. That's not how the world works. And then you see the film and you go. I mean, for me personally, very much enjoyed it for what it was. Saw the brilliance for what it was, but just was like, wow, like people really did not get this movie, as far as I was concerned anyway, at all. I just really did not understand this film. This is clearly not a movie celebrating anything. I really didn't understand it. I can understand it giving people a kind of feeling of, because in the first half an hour it's very euphoric in the sense of this gang, these droogs, especially Alex, are, because it's being told from his point of view, are so enjoying and wrapped up in what they do. They love what they do, that you can feel that. You can personally feel that, and that will give you a feeling of power, a sense of power for that moment. It's the greatness of filmmaking, storytelling, is being able to make you feel the feelings, the emotions that are being shown to you. But after that, it goes away. You don't go out and think, oh yeah, now I'm going to go and do the things that you just saw.
Well, you need that bit for the impact of later on.
Of course, absolutely.
But what happened was, it was in the early 70s. There were, I think, a couple of cases of gang violence. One was it was in England, but a Danish lady was attacked and raped. And the gang were singing in the rain. And then when it all came to court, they just blamed the film.
Yeah.
Which probably was recommended by the lawyers.
Absolutely, would have been recommended by the lawyers. Yeah.
And it's even debate whether they were singing that when it happened. They blamed the film. There was another case as well. There was a gang called something like the Oranges or something silly,
right?
And that got connected with it. But it wasn't. It wasn't actually banned.
No.
Kubrick was very concerned about it. He was getting death threats.
People would come into his house.
Yeah, and the police were saying
threatening his family, which is obviously the most important thing to him.
So apparently, the police said to him that you've done in this film, someone in a
home invasion.
This could happen to you.
Yeah.
He was worried. He withdrew it. Only in the UK though, didn't he? He withdrew it
because it was the only place that was getting this kind of reaction.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But as far as the media were making out, anyway, I don't know of any other media reports happening anywhere else where they're saying, Clockwork Orange is responsible for deaths.
I think in other cultures, the headlines would be, criminals try to pass blame onto,
perhaps,
whereas over here, it is strange, and it was. After this was the Video Nasties, a few years later, and this kind of gets put into that, but it wasn't a Video Nasty at all. And then even 10 years after the Video Nasties, you had the Child's Play 3 case, where a murder was blamed on a film that nowadays would be a 15, easy,
Again, I suppose if we're talking about what's in the film, if you're talking about the gore, the violence and sexual violence and all these kind of things, or just sex in general, that's one thing. But to claim that anything, because a film could, let's say, not be so outrageous with the violence, but it could just make people feel a certain way. We could use that as an excuse, to use art as an excuse for someone's behaviour. It just seems so reprehensible and moronic, and just some of the worst kind of logic that I can really think of. And it's a real shame, and I think a stain on this country really that this is the way that certain people behaved in the media, in especially newspapers, to create the sensationalism that's just
crazy.
Tarnished his career in a way, And I completely understand why Kubrick would want to sort of get rid of the film.
It's a shame, but going back to the media and with the Video Nasties, what angers me about that so much is, as a kid, all it done was make me more interested and want to watch it. And I watched some right crap because of that. Yeah. Whereas a movie like this should never be. The Exorcist, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, RR, and the great movies should never be banned and should not be lumped into them.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I do think that because it got that reissue in 99, would it? Pretty much as soon,
2000,
just after Kubrick passed away.
Yeah.
Warner Brothers was like, right, we're releasing that.
Absolutely, of course.
And they've done a big, that regenerated it for the public. And I think it was good for me because seeing it on the big screen, I generally remember the first time I saw it properly. I saw a bootleg copy, so the picture was terrible years ago. I think my memory might be swayed, but I'd have been like 13, if not younger. Right. And I'm pretty sure it was in a foreign language with English subtitles.
Right.
And I probably watched about half an hour of it to an hour and was like, I just can't.
I saw, because I saw, I must have been about 17 or something, so close to 16, 17.
So just before he got
Just before he died. He was still alive at the time. Eyes Wide Shut, I don't think it may have been, I can't remember, mentioned or whatever, being worked on. And I got a friend of mine, he went to America and got a copy in America, and so I got a sort of,
decent.
Decent.
Would that have been a Region 2 DVD or something?
No,
Region
it was a VHS.
Oh, VHS, okay.
It was a VHS.
NTSC job.
This is before DVDs are common. Okay. I'm talking, it's got to be, 99 at the latest, maybe even 98. 98, 99.
Okay,
And he's because obviously I haven't got a player for that.
Yeah.
So he's got a converter. So he's converted it onto a British VHS, and that's how I've watched it. And it's not very good quality. It's pretty poor actually. But yeah, it doesn't have any subtitles or anything like that. Which I know that's how a lot of people earlier saw it. They saw like foreign, from other countries that where English wasn't the first language, was where a lot of people originally saw it after the fact. Yeah. But yeah, so I had an American one, and it was really, like I say, it was really awful. But I quite liked that about it, because still at this point, the film to me is this big mystery. Yeah. And is a bit kind of considered wrong, and you shouldn't be watching it. And so when you're watching a film like that, that's kind of how you want to be seeing it. You want to be seeing it in a way where it looks all gritty, because it just looked really grimy and gritty, and I wasn't getting all of the best parts of it. Because when I went to see it at the cinema when it came out again, it was all it became almost like a new movie in a way. Everything, I could hear the sound properly, so I could hear all the little bits and pieces of the music that were lost in all of the fuzz of the video copy. And visually, obviously, it now looks stunning. It looks amazing, where it didn't on the video. So it's almost like I'm watching, like I say, two different films. So my experience of it, of watching it in cinema and watching it at home, very, very different, for more than just the reason of it being in the cinema and being at home. But I still got the same feel overall. I still felt exactly the same thing which I felt when I watched it on that awful version at home, which was that, yeah, I understand what he's saying here. I understand that the opening of the film is to make you feel, you want to feel this that what they're experiencing. Not what the victim is experiencing. And this is obviously what the problem with certain people would have a problem at that time, especially with the film, is that we're not sympathising with the victim, right? And that when we do end up sympathising with the victim is Alex, right? Yeah. And I get that, but at the same time, it's not understanding the method of storytelling, which is the narrator, right? This is our character, eyes are his, right? Yeah. Our thoughts, our understanding are his thoughts and understanding. So you've got to take that into consideration. And I think a lot of the time people really don't get that kind of just quality of storytelling, maybe. I don't know.
It's very clever storytelling.
Yeah.
Whenever you know me, I don't often criticise movies. I kind of, if I don't like something, I sort of away with it, move on to something else. But a lot of movies I don't like are ones where I can't sympathise or relate to the main characters. And in this, the fact I can is scary, and that's the point, I think, or a point of the film.
Absolutely,
is the fact that I'm watching this, and the first time I saw it on the big screen, which I walked out of that cinema thinking this is one of the best films ever made, and I still think that. It made me feel, I'm like, wow, I shouldn't be sympathising with him, or should I? It got me thinking, and that was,
there's two things going on. There's two thoughts happening.
That's three things to be brilliantly written, so well made, and that performance. In any other movie, that character, there would be another character you're supposed to relate to, and you only see the vile side of it.
Yeah.
And this is something that has been done since, but not so well. You look at a few years ago, The Joker, for example. Same kind of thing. I like that movie. A lot of people don't, but it's not done as well as in this.
No, not at all, in my opinion. I'm not particularly a big fan of the film, Joker. But yes, like I said earlier, Clockwork Orange is an influence on anything. I'd say anything to do with male youth alienation, right?
Yeah.
Gang aesthetics or anything like that. The enjoyment of the things that we're not supposed to enjoy, right?
Yeah.
So which is kind of sadly a part of the human condition, right? Which again is another part of the commentary on about we could talk about Burgess and the writer of the novel, what happened to him in his personal life, what prompted him to write the novel in the first place. His first wife being raped, and this film being a sort of novel being a catharsis, really trying to understand the mentality and the future of us as a people, I suppose. And it's all written and filmed with a lot to say. It's not a stupid film. No. Many stupid films have been made because of this film.
Yeah.
People have looked at it and thought, oh yeah, it's just a movie about people that like raping and killing and yay, woo.
Yeah.
And it's not.
No.
That's not what this film is at all. Or the story in particular is. And a lot of people miss the real crucial element to it. And I get kind of why, because maybe your brain can't handle too many things happening in just one story. You know, the big part, like I say, about the removal of oneself, you know, in order to control people. And this is the real element to the film, which is the second half of the film that so few people talk about, which makes, no sense to me, except right at the end when, I won't. We'll
do this, but no, because this is one that I think, if you haven't seen it, you might not, like you say, you might not know the ending, because the bits that you'll know are the visual bits early on in the movie and the music, really. So, no spoilers.
No, try not to spoil the film too much.
Because there was something I nearly said something about how it could go into another genre, but I'm not going to mention that because that will give away a lot of the plot. I'll tell you once we stop recording. But anything else to add? Because
I just wanted to mention something that you mentioned really early on about desertification and what's happening here in Britain at the time. A big, like you mentioned it, which is very important, that the BBFC recognised the importance of the film. And they passed it uncut, no cuts at all, which was quite unusual, especially for the kind of film that visually that you see. But Kubrick's clever, and I don't think generally Kubrick's not, in my opinion, has ever been someone who's tried to necessarily titillate, right? Or give some sort of visuals that were to exploit and stuff like this. So I never thought that he would, So like when you see it, you think, of course there weren't going to be any cuts. He was never going to do something that was so extreme that just like they go, ugh. And a couple of films had come out earlier, within a year before this one in Britain, that had similar-ish kind of attitudes towards violence and sexual violence and these kind of imagery. So you have films like The Devils, which I love very much, which was cut because a lot of it is quite really extreme stuff. Who's directed by Ken Russell, fantastic, one of my favourite filmmakers of all time. He was originally he was asked to, I think, direct Clockwork Orange, but turned it down. And the other film was Straw Dogs, which again is another sort of film that doesn't really get talked about very much anymore. And it was an early
is that Dustin Hoffman?
Hoffman film. St. George. It's really good, but again, it has it has a rape scene in it, which caused a lot of controversy at the time about whether these kind of scenes are not just could potentially have people going out committing these acts, but also the way that it's shown is it's shown from, like I say, from an exploitative side of things, where we're watching it almost for our enjoyment. Right, which was the real worry. Now, when I saw the film years later, I didn't feel that way about it. I thought it was a horrific scene that was in no way suggesting that this is something that the audience should be enjoying. So, but these were the kind of things that were around at the time. In the early 70s.
As well, American Wes Craven's Last House on the Left was around the same time. Which is completely different to this, but same sort of themes. And kind of that's a difficult watch even now.
Absolutely, and that was cut
as well. Only very recently.
Very
recently it's been
uncut.
I
mean, they are going through most of them now. I'm guessing BBC are rewatching things and getting because I'm not a fan of censorship as long as it's legal, as long as what's on the screen is legal and no one's being hurt or exploited. Which is obviously being hurt, then I think any story should be able to be told. So I am glad that all this stuff is coming out even though a lot of it is rubbish.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
ultimately, I mean, everyone, like I say, you should be free to watch rubbish if you so choose to.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to let people know that.
Yeah. I'll go back. So I don't think Last House on the Left is rubbish.
No, me neither.
But
there is a lot.
It's not one that I love. Wes Craven. I could watch Nightmare on Elm Street every day of the week. You know, but even things like Hills Have Eyes, which is darker, I can watch it, but that one I can't.
Yeah.
It's a struggle. But it's one that once that got unbanned, so to speak, I'm glad I watched it.
Yeah, me too. And I've seen it at the time that it had been released, which again is a very similar time that Clockwork Orange had come back out onto the cinema, so the beginning of the 2000s, where a lot of these movies again were being sort of maybe still cut a little bit, but were getting a release. I watched loads of them because just out of like say you're intrigued, you want to. You heard for years, all growing up in your adolescence, about how they banned movies and that. You just want to watch them, even if you know that they're probably not going to be very good.
Do you think a lot of this came from because Clockwork Orange was lumped in with these? When Kubrick died and they re-released it, it made money, and they thought, well, that's re-released other banned films.
Yeah, absolutely. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre was another one, and The Exorcist. I mean, these were
it was all around the same time, wasn't it?
Absolutely, yeah, the turn of the century. So yeah, I mean, it's just the way of things. One movie gets it, and then they're just domino effecting.
Yeah. So guys, you've got to get to the cinema.
Absolutely. I mean, I could not recommend. I mean, Kubrick. Again, I'm glad that we haven't gone off on a tangent on Kubrick, because I could do that and just talk about him as a director. He's not necessarily one of my favourite directors of all time, but I appreciate and respect the man incredibly. You know, the advancements in filmmaking techniques and technology are vital to his career, and he's an extremely important filmmaker. I understand why people perhaps don't particularly like his style, because, like I say, I'm not a massive fan of it in general. I find it a bit too cold for my liking overall. But you've got to appreciate and respect him.
Yeah, definitely. And something I've done a bit of research for this podcast. Believe it or not, I do some. Might not show, but a couple of people have said that, you know, any other filmmaker, this movie by far would be considered their greatest work, but for him it isn't. No,
because he's got. I mean, I couldn't say what I'd say is I prefer over them. I've got a handful of his films that I just think are fantastic, and that's it. And this is certainly one of them. Yeah. So yeah. He's Shining 2001 and. Dr. Strangelove, I love. I mean, he was a funny guy for his coldness, which was a big part of, I think, of him just in general, was probably quite a sort of standoffish person. That the only people really important that he was very, open with were probably his family, his close people. So he was very much like that, and he was very much an intellectual as well, and a technical guy. Very much into the method of filmmaking.
But he's a filmmaker who, I haven't seen all of his films. The Shining, I love, but every film of his I've seen, I can see it's a great movie. Just if I don't particularly get on with it, I can see it, and I'm like, if I was a professional film critic, 5 out of 5. For so many, not all of them, but for so many of them. Sure. And if you are interested, we said we wouldn't go off one. A documentary you guys showed back when it was the film theatre called The Filmmaker, about a guy, I forget his name, who was an actor and quit acting and became Kubrick's assistant. The documentary's about this guy, but you get to see what he was standoffish, but people loved him. Yes, a lot but a lot of people did. Absolutely, because people throw around the word genius a lot, but when you look at what he'd done, he was criticised a lot for his techniques, but as many people like Malcolm McDowell got it. And whereas there's the other side of it, Shelley Duvall. Well, she speaks. When she was more coherent in speaking about these kind of things, she has been very sort of one way or the other about it. I mean, she's never spoken just completely negatively about him, like in some he was just an awful human being kind of thing, which a lot of people want to put on her these days. That look at the horrible way that she was treated, and all this, and which I'm not in any kind of way dismissing that she was treated very poorly by him, because very well was, but I'm sure that there is a hell of a lot more to it.
than just that was the only thing.
It might have
I'm
been.
not excusing it.
Oh, no. But we don't know. And
Exactly.
with the way her life's gone, it might not be just that, obviously.
Yeah.
Or why,
But sure, I would not want filmmakers today to behaving in those kind of ways in order to get the best out of their actors. I don't,
And maybe because this has come forward, it's actually stopped a lot of that.
Yeah,
he wasn't the only director.
Absolutely not.
Not at all.
I think he's probably one of the better ones in certain respects.
Yeah, and you've got to think as well. This movie's 53 years old now.
Yes.
So things were a lot different,
They were. I mean, again, that's no excuse necessarily, but yes, of course, it was a long time.
With Kubrick, we've learned so much about filmmaking positively. Through him, but also, the way actors are treated might be better because it's come out.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But March the 9th. 9
o'clock.
9 o'clock. And
King Street Cinema.
Yeah. Book online now. And don't forget to follow all the socials and stuff. Next month, we're going to be chatting about another classic. Well, it's actually later. It'll be later on in March, actually.
Yeah.
You're going to be showing another one of the late, Rocky.
Yeah.
Which I'll be hopefully on the next episode chatting with somebody about that. But we're going to have a chat about Carl Weathers, aren't we?
Yeah, we should do that.
The legend that was Carl Weathers, who passed away not long ago. Yeah. Thank you very much. We're going to be back in a sec. We're going to talk to Dan from the cinema. Just what else is going on at King Street in March. He's going to just fill us in on that. James, thank you.
Goodbye.
Dan, welcome back to the podcast. First appearance this year.
Thank you, Andy. It's good to be back.
How's the year going so far?
It's going well, actually. Yeah, it's going well. We had a good end to the month, the first month of the year. February has been good. Good films, good audiences. Everybody's leaving with a smile on their face, or fulfilled in some way.
Yeah, it depends on the film.
That's right.
We've headed into March.
Mm-hmm.
So just going to give us a sort of rundown on some of the stuff coming up. Obviously, the classic films are back. So we spoke about Clockwork Orange, and I'm going to do another episode on Rocky, which is coming up at the end of March. But there's so much else going on as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've got we've got some really good films coming up in March. Obviously, we're in the awards corridor now, so we would have seen a number of these films or a number of films earlier in January and February, and we've got more of those in March as well. So we're starting the month with a film called The Settlers, which was Chile's best international feature submission to the Oscars this year. It didn't place, but the film is extraordinary anyway. So I'm really excited for that one to start. We've got a film called The Taste of Things, which I haven't seen yet, but Juliette Binoche is the main star in this film. Her films have always done well here for us, so this one should really work for us. That starts on the 8th of March. Obviously, we've got Clockwork Orange, which you've already talked about, which I'm very excited.
That's a film I can watch over and over, to be honest.
It's wonderful. It's just a wonderful film. That launches our late shows for 2024. So I could talk actually a little after we've run through the March films, talk a little bit about the other late shows that we've got coming up.
Cool. Yeah.
Most of those are anniversary films as well, which it's going to be exciting to bring some of those to the cinema as well. We're bringing back Anatomy of a Fall, which did very well for us last year, and I'm convinced we'll win the Oscar for Best International Feature this year.
Yeah. I came along here with some mates who didn't know anything about it,
right?
And they really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed it as well. And I have to say, the best performance from a dog on screen, if you've seen it, is amazing. That dog should get an Oscar.
Yes. May well do. It's the start of a new category.
Yeah, you get beaten by Godzilla.
Speaking of Godzilla, Japan, we also have a film called Perfect Days, which is the return of Wim Wenders to fiction feature filmmaking, which is now Japan's submission to the Oscars this year for Best International Feature, and that did place, so that's in the competition. So it's like I said, I think Anatomy of a Fall will win, but Perfect Days is definitely has a shot there as well. Ping Pong, talking in terms of classics, Ping Pong, which most people probably have not heard of. It's from 1986, made in the UK, set in London's Chinatown, and it's sort of a comedy mystery that revolves around Chinese culture in the UK. It's like it's a murder mystery, but a comedy murder mystery. And that's in a new DCP reissue from Park Circus. So it's the first time on DCP. So that's going to be great. That's also the cover on our March brochure. So they've done a fantastic new poster for that as well. The Promised Land is coming towards the end of March. This is from the director of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, Danish film, and I haven't seen it, so I can't really talk about the film as it is, but it looks fantastic. It looks visually, it looks stunning. A lot of landscape photography in there. Mads Mikkelsen is the main star in there, who's always infinitely watchable. I'm excited about that. Days of Heaven in a 4K restoration, also from Park Circus. They're really on a roll now with their restorations and reissues. So
it's interesting reissues as well. That and Ping Pong. It's not the out and out classics, but it's critically acclaimed films that I think pass people by. And this is the way to see it. I mean, Ping Pong, I'm all over, to be honest.
I mean, Ping Pong is it's an interesting one because it's it opened it premiered at the Venice Film Festival in 1986 and then just disappeared, and nobody really paid it any attention after that. But it's fantastic. It's a fantastic film that is kind of ripe for rediscovery. So
there was last year you showed the name escapes me because I'm on the spot. The British film about the black family or the black lad in London in the 70s. I've never heard of it. Was it called Pressure?
It was.
And there's very little about it online. then I thought this should be considered an out-and-out classic.
Exactly.
And another one I came with a couple of people. We all really enjoyed it. And it's movies like that you're showing, which I get excited about. Obviously, there's the Clockwork Orange, and when you show the classics. But I'm discovering these films that I think the way things have changed. You don't flick through the channels and catch things late night on TV anymore.
Yeah.
You always read about what it is before you watch it. So that's why I tend to always go for maybe newer stuff instead of looking for the older things. Then when I see this, I'm like, well, I'm going to do my best to come along to that.
Yeah, I think it's important for us as well. I mean, certainly for me, when I program, it's important that when a month is put together, that when we do classic films side by side with new films, the classics aren't just a gimmick. It's almost like I will look at them as this is a new release, and this is where we're going to place this new release, because it's there are going to be so many people who haven't seen these films at all, let alone in a cinema.
Yeah.
So, they deserve, from me, they deserve the same attention as anything that's a new release.
Yeah.
And then we treat them as such with our marketing and everything else. So yeah,
that's good. It's like the horror makeup guy in an interview was saying, Tom Savani, is that his name? That every film's a new film if you haven't seen it. So
exactly. Yeah,
that's a great way of looking at it.
Yeah, I think it's Peter Bogdanovich as well who said that there are no old films. There are just films you've seen and films you haven't seen.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting as well, just from not even from a scholar perspective, but from a general audience perspective. It's interesting looking back at the way culture ebbs and flows, and ideas and opinions come round again. Things never change for good. Things constantly recycle.
Yeah.
You can see all of that through different generations of filmmaking, and the ideas and the recycling of ideas that then brings with it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Other films coming up in March as well. We've got Four Daughters, which is also another nominee for best documentary feature at the Academy Awards this year. This, I don't really want to say too much about this one. It's very good. It's very very interesting approach to documentary filmmaking. We've only got 3 shows of this, so if you've got the time, it comes highly recommended. And if you want to laugh at the end of March, then Wicked Little Letters is definitely the one for you. Jessie Buckley and Olivia Colman and Timothy Spall.
This is the sweary one, isn't
this
it?
is the very sweary one, yeah. In fact, there are 2 versions of the trailer as well.
Yeah.
There's the red band version, which we don't have. We're not playing that one. But if you want to watch the red band version, have a look it up online.
Yeah, if we to do this on the podcast, I'll make sure I put the right trailer.
Yes, please do.
I saw the trailer for it wasn't the red band one, with my parents before a film, and they were really excited because of the cast and it's sort of this old-fashioned set, and I'm like, oh, they're going to go and see it, and I'm not going to see it with them. It's I'm not saying my parents are prudes or anything, but I think it's going to have a lot of swearing in, but it looks funny, and that's the main thing, and it's only 15 as well, isn't it? It's not,
yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's not it's not vulgar and horribly offensive. It's not, it's very. It's done in it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's all tongue in cheek, isn't it? So,
And that cast as well. Yeah, Jessie Buckley and Olivia Colman together with Timothy Spall in the mix.
Yeah,
and looking at the trailer, there's a lot of British character actors.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever there's the sitcom The Windsors. The bloke who plays Williams in the trailer quite a bit. So there's familiar faces, and I think as British comedies goes, this could be a breath of fresh air. Because it's not so safe. Yeah,
that's it exactly.
Yeah, it doesn't look very Richard Curtis, does it?
No, that's right. Yeah, it's like the anti-Richard Curtis.
Yeah. So that's why I'm definitely all over.
Yeah, so that's the end of the month. We're gonna end the month with a laugh.
Yeah.
So that's great. The last classic of the month is Rocky, which I'm very excited about doing. That Rocky was on the list, or it was initially programmed in 2021 when we were going to reopen in 2021 early in the year, and that didn't happen. So so I'm glad that we're finally able to bring that back.
Yeah.
Fueled to a great degree by the recent passing of Carl Weathers, who everybody loved.
Yeah.
Everybody in the world loved Carl Weathers. There was nothing abrasive about the man. He was the loveliest guy.
I met him.
You met him.
It was at a Comic-Con. We're going to do an episode on Rocky.
We are.
But all I say is the charisma from that guy. I only met him briefly. It was seconds, but it was like, yeah, he's the man. He's the impression I got, and I wanted to reference Happy Gilmore.
Okay.
I was a bit. He came across as a nice guy, but I was a bit intimidated. I didn't do it.
Right.
I didn't do it.
Okay.
I didn't do it. Because when he was signing the autograph, I wanted to say it's all in the hips, like in there.
Okay.
But I just said thank you, very nice, and moved along. But he was cool, and he generally seemed pleased to be there for his fans as well. Which, often at these things you can sense someone is there because they have to be.
Yeah.
But there's no way he had to be. He was there to celebrate his career, I believe. And you've got. I mentioned Happy Gilmore. It's not the most critically acclaimed film, but people love it. There's obviously Rocky, Predator. Then he had the sort of canon films like Action Jackson. And
Jackson, absolutely.
And later on was in Star Wars as well, in the more recent Star
Mandalorian,
Wars. Yeah. And he's one of those faces that when he popped up in the film, it would make people smile, wouldn't it? It's that.
Yeah.
And the whole. I'll go on about it more, but the follow-ups to Rocky, even though he wasn't in them, were around his character. The son of Apollo Creed.
Yeah, that's right.
And so one of those very sad.
I mean, it was lovely the way that they even in the, it was like the Rocky 4, I think, how they they'd managed to evolve that relationship between Rocky and Apollo into a friendship, and
and that was possibly never, if they were going to do a sequel, that might not have been intended, but because of his charisma and what he brought to that character, people wanted more of it.
Yes. Anyway, we'll talk.
Talk more about that. Yeah. That's almost like a trailer for the next
It
episode.
is. That's it. Yeah.
So thanks very much for joining us again, and we'll speak to you soon.
Yeah. Brilliant. Pleasure.
We've just come out of the cinema to see Iron Claw. Andrew, what did you think?
Yeah, it's good, wasn't it? Very sad though.
Are you a wrestling fan?
I don't know if fan is the right word. Kind of enthusiastic observer. Fan might be overstating it, but I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah. Do you know anything about the people in it, the wrestlers? Or?
No, it's all new to me, I'm afraid.
So you say it wouldn't matter if you saw it?
Yeah, no, I don't think any prior knowledge is required, to be honest. No.
Yeah, and the acting, it was Zac Efron.
Bit of a departure from normal for him. Scarily jacked, but he was very good, which I don't know if I was quite expecting.
Yeah, so you'd thoroughly recommend it?
Oh, definitely, yeah.
You've also seen Wicked Little Letters, yeah?
Yes. Yeah.
What did you think of that? Because that's coming to King Street soon as well.
I also really enjoyed that. Yeah, that's a sweary good time.
It's a very sweary good time. Funny, dramatic. What parts of it did you like?
Yeah, all of it really. It's funny and dramatic. Mostly funny. The drama, perhaps. I don't know. I mean, the fact that it was real, I suppose, lends it a genuine sort of sense of stakes that it might lack otherwise.
Yeah,
enjoyed it a lot.
excellent. So 2 films you'd thoroughly recommend seeing.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Hey, we've just seen The Iron Claw.
Yes,
Antonia, what
Hello.
did you think?
What did I think? I did enjoy it quite a lot, actually. I was a wrestling fan when I was a kid, around the sort of Hulk Hogan era, I would say his heyday, and I believe this takes place slightly before that time, which, as a result of which I hadn't actually heard of the wrestlers in the film. But I would agree you don't need to have heard of them to enjoy the film. I thought it was quite an emotional journey, actually. I think the title, The Iron Claw, was quite an interesting one because it's about the dad's signature move, but I think also it's around the dad's hold he had on his family and the sort of grip he had on their outcomes and their careers, and the kind of coercion that he kind of put across to sort of force them into his mould of an ideal son and an ideal wrestler. So yeah, it was pretty interesting.
And I'm going to mention this. Many years ago, we went to see, was it 17 again? Zac Efron. You wouldn't think it was the same bloke, would you?
No, you absolutely wouldn't. No.
Were you impressed with his performance?
I was. I've always thought he was a decent actor, though.
Yeah.
I think because he had some sort of interesting personal history, and then a few years ago his jaw was broken, which I think has possibly led him to take on some different roles, some more character acting.
Okay, yeah. Because the last thing I saw him in was the Baywatch movie, the remake.
Oh, I've not had the pleasure of seeing that.
And it was terrible. And it was a pleasant surprise to see him sink his teeth into a dramatic role with a cinematic release. He's done some TV stuff, hasn't he? But to see this was good.
Yeah.
And all the performances were great, to be honest. And you have also seen Wicked Little Letters as well.
I certainly have.
What were your views on that one?
My views on that? At the risk of sounding slightly prejudiced, I don't often like British films. I find they tend to be of one or two moulds. They're either comedic or really, really, really sad. This one didn't suffer from either of those tropes. I did find it was quite feministy, a little bit too leaning in the all the men are idiots kind of angle, which I don't know how fair that possibly was. There was an interesting plot, though. I need to look further into the true story behind it.
Yeah, that's one of those films. Well, both of these actually. I've left the cinema wanting to find out what actually happened.
Yeah.
I looked into the Iron Claw actually, and there's the film's quite accurate, but there's even more to it.
More they left out, I suppose.
Yeah, because it's quite sad. So they've left some out, but it's nice to leave a film and want to know more. That's a sign of a good film, I'd say.
Yes, I completely agree.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
And hopefully we'll speak to you again soon.